wanted to start with the IRD, the Institute for Religion and Democracy, because we've already cited them a couple of times. They're the bogeyman for anyone left-leaning and even institutionalists. My understanding of the IRD, where they came about, Mark Tooley apparently came out of the CIA. If I knew that, I forgot about it.
Well,
I'm sure he was a top operative, right?
That's what they say.
Yeah.
I have no idea if it's true.
Yeah. So
I'll have
anyway,
to ask him. He's a Facebook friend.
it became known that we were sending a lot of our apportionment dollars to the World Council of Churches that was then funneling that money to communist guerrilla groups in Central America. Did you ever hear about this?
I've heard about that.
So we weren't the only ones, but even so, it was really scandalous that money put in the offering plate to Jesus was going to godless militants. And there was just something so incongruous about that. The IRD was begun to put that to an end, and they did effectively end it. But there was a lot of sour grapes over that have maintained ever since. And of course, Tooley and the rest of them have a very conservative, evangelical, right-leaning bent. But does that necessarily make them bad? And of course, you and I lean right, and we'd say no. But we also would acknowledge there's some really screwy people on the right that are often wrong and bad actors, right?
Yes.
And is the IRD, to your knowledge, guilty of any of that? Are you aware of at any point them behaving in ways that are duplicitous or dishonest or manipulative?
I'm not. I would say that there have been times I thought some of their writers were not the most knowledgeable on Methodism, on the Methodist tradition, and some of their writers, I would read articles and think, well, this kind of reminds me of a secular piece, or kind of trying to, a bit sensationalist, but that was several years back, and their main people I always appreciate. They cite their sources. They're shedding light on what's really going on in the United Methodist world, and I think.
So, for instance, within the last year, they've put out pieces on things going on at two seminaries that are really, there's Iliff and Duke, I think, were the two that they talked about, where there was open pagan worship going on, Unitarian theology being preached from pulpits, and straight up antinomianism with respect to sexual ethics. They do these, I would call them exposés,
Yes.
So, but I'm not sure. So is that, I guess one of the questions I wanted to ask is it wrong to shine a light on bad behavior?
Absolutely not.
Well, but so, and we're comparing things to things going on in the world, right? Are you familiar with Libs of TikTok?
No.
So it's a Twitter account, and it's this woman that finds things that kind of unbalanced people on the left post online, especially teachers talking about indoctrinating students or grooming students, and then they, with no commentary, just repost it for people who are on the right to watch and see and then react against. So most recently, I think it was a children's hospital putting out videos saying that they perform genital surgeries on people as young as 16. And with the transsexual stuff going on, they're shining a light on what's actually going on the left. Some teachers, the most scandalous one was two teachers talking about how it's their responsibility to groom, that it's wrong for children not to be sexually active, and that it's good for adults to actually pressure them into sex acts. So shining a light on some of these things, a lot of what's common today is centrist or left-leaning people would just say, oh, they're just blowing things out of proportion. It's not really going on. It's not as bad as they say. The big thing is, oh, they're saying that we're going to change foundational doctrines.
Right.
We're not going to change any foundational. Well, you just don't care about the foundational doctrines, and you're changing a lot of things along the way. But it's this kind of, I think the phrase is gaslighting, right? Just saying this concern you have is not legitimate. And the IRD's bread and butter is saying, yeah, it is. Look at this extreme stuff that they're trying to do when nobody's looking. So there's, so Mark Tooley. Let's see, this is the Wall Street Journal. Let's see. Friday, August 19th, 2022, he wrote a piece called A Messy Methodist Schism.
Right, I saw that.
And it was under a paywall online, so I didn't see that, but a member of the church brought this to me, and it's really pretty milquetoast so far as I'm concerned. It's not right-leaning propaganda.
It's great journalism. I read that, and it's funny, I saw some people I know react to it and saying, look at this in the Wall Street Journal, a really informative piece that tells us what's going on. And somebody joked, look at this good journalism from the Wall Street Journal. And then I thought to myself, well, I know who that is, and he's not a journal writer, he's an independent writer, and he got it right and described it in neutral terms because he's a conservative.
Yes.
And progressives these days have a hard time describing things in neutral terms. And obviously, I'm not neutral.
Well, okay,
but,
anybody watching this is going to hear that and go, you only think that because you're conservative.
Of course. Right.
So that feels like the most difficult conversation to have, which whether or not you're right, so many people are just not even going to receive. Conservatives paint an accurate picture, and left-leaning people always skew things. And of course, you and I would readily acknowledge right-leaning people regularly often skew things to the right unconsciously. We have a worldview that we operate within. But even so, there does seem to be a real disconnect. There is a real disconnect. You see so much. Well, I'm going to advance the story because you see it in this. So on Twitter, I first became aware of this. I don't remember the date. It was posted on August 25th. Mark Tooley posted, a Dallas, Texas Methodist cleric posts his dream that I choked to death on a bologna sandwich, evincing spiritual and intellectual depth for parts of the denomination and further confirming the need for the unfolding split. And then he has a surprise face. But then he has screenshots of this guy.
When it came out.
So the guy's name is Stan Copeland. So now I've got this, and he posted on a Facebook group called Methodist Sojourners. And it's this whole imagined, I very much doubt he had this dream, but he presents this account of Mark Tooley choking to death on a sandwich, a bologna sandwich, and then appearing before the gates of heaven to St. Peter. And St. Peter asks him this question over and over, what have you done to advance the kingdom of God on earth? And then Tooley acts like a real tool throughout this whole thing, is just a real jerk. And he puts him, there's no way that Tooley reads this and go, oh yeah, that resembles me. You know,
Right.
anytime, one of the rules I have in dialogue with the disagreement is if you're not presenting the person's argument in terms that they would recognize, you're guilty of straw manning them, you know, or gaslighting them. And so this is definitely a straw manning piece. It's really nasty towards him. It makes him seem really bad. So it breaches, to my understanding, and I'm gonna scroll through this for anybody who looks at this online. But yeah, it's really, just pause it and you can see how icky this is. And he doesn't even say that Mark eventually gets into heaven. It leaves it with John Wesley wants to come and chew you out. I found so much objectionable about this,
Absolutely,
and just its rendering of the situation as it is. But it also crosses these lines of propriety, where in what world is it appropriate to imagine someone dying and it being a good or funny thing, and then to speak to how their judgment is going to go on the other side? Like, as a pastor, my brain doesn't even go here. Like, God is going to judge how he's going to judge. What kind of, and then, do you know who this Stan Copeland guy is?
He's a pastor at Lovers Lane United Methodist Church in Dallas, I believe.
Yeah. Have you seen any of the stuff he does? Have you seen his videos he does?
Perhaps in the past, I'm not sure.
He does these YouTube videos. He might put them other places. He calls himself the Picklin Parson, and he has a real congenial attitude. But I mean, he has a long history. I mean, I've seen a few. I can't watch his videos anymore because they're routinely dishonest and defamatory. According to Mark, this guy Copeland was originally a conservative, and he's since left that fold. And it's so odd to me. He's not able to render the arguments of the people he now disagrees with in any way that resembles the way that we would recognize it. It's a very odd phenomenon. But Tooley, he doesn't respond in kind. He doesn't personally attack him. He just says where he serves, and that's it. I did want to retch up. Do you know who Evan Rohrstadge is?
He's a journalist, right?
I don't know if he's a pastor within the UMC. He does a podcast with Drew McIntyre.
Oh, okay, never mind. Yes,
he's
good. He's a
people.
pastor. I've seen him on Facebook, which is a common theme for me. So.
But something he responded in the comment section and tweets. He said, "Mark, can you imagine if a conservative United Methodist wrote similarly about a progressive United Methodist? Our news service would deploy all three of their reporters to report live from the scene. A special general conference would be called, and the bishops would create a commission. Progressives can get away with anything."
Right. I did see that. And that says it all.
It's really weird, you know, that, and I wonder, I need to get a left-leaning person on this
Yeah,
show
you do.
because I wonder what a left-leaning person would say to that. Like if they're combining this with Trumpism, then what they believe is, well, it's okay when we do it because your side is so awful.
Right.
So this is what we have to do to shut you guys down, because if we play by the same rules, the same standard is applied to us, we're going to lose, and we're on the right side of history, and we can't lose. We have a moral obligation to God to win any terms necessary.
That does seem to be the mindset.
Okay. I couldn't think of any other reason how it would be justified.
Well, not justified, but simply a blindness.
Okay.
Like, if you don't ever think about the fact that you could be on the wrong side, it's easy to make light of mocking and judging somebody on the other side. I should apologize for my earlier comment when I said it's, progressives can't be neutral anymore. I, of course, don't mean all progressives. And there are many conservatives who engage in sensationalist journalism. Okay, it's all over the internet. I know it when I see it. When I see a conservative place or a conservative piece that's trying to make conservatives angry, and that's what they're doing, is they're rabble rousing in the conservative realm. Okay, that happens obviously, and that happens in the progressive realm when the main point of your writing is making people angry and getting people riled up. It doesn't lift anybody up. It doesn't do anything for the kingdom of God. I do believe that in the secular world, in the world at large, and especially in the United States, there's been a breakdown in journalistic standards, and I think that this bears out in actual, open, known changes in journalistic standards, where what is considered neutral language is no longer the same. And so Mark Tooley's article in the Wall Street Journal was written with classic old school journalistic standards where you are trying to present both sides. And so the friend I referred to who pointed it out on Facebook is someone who is more progressive, more liberal, or at least centrist, to someone who actually doesn't agree with the direction our church is taking, had no idea who Mark Tooley was.
Right.
Read that article in the Wall Street Journal and said, oh, that's a good article that describes our situation.
Yeah.
So someone more left-leaning read Mark Tooley's traditionally good journalistic article, was not offended by it at all because he didn't know who Mark Tooley was.
Right.
Whereas many progressives who know who Mark Tooley is
Yeah.
would read it and be offended just because it's written by Mark Tooley.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, and it's this. So I'm an enlightenment person, whether I like it or not. That's just where I. And one of the great sins that I think can be committed in conversation and when you disagree, it's not just straw manning, it's not just gaslighting, but it's ad hominem as well. Ad hominem is when someone says something you disagree with, and rather than engaging the content, you engage the person who wrote it, and you speak ill of them, which doesn't get us anywhere. It's actually really toxic for everybody. And yet increasingly, that's what I see within our denomination is, here are these concerns being raised about the behavior of bishops, or about conduct on seminaries, or the way we're using our money, or local licensed pastors being dismissed when they step too far out of line. There are a number of things that are brought up, and rather than addressing these, you have, man, these guys are lying their butts off. That's what this guy said whenever he did his write-up on, he didn't say butts. This is full of disinformation. I've heard our own conference officials say there's disinformation everywhere. And to be honest with you, I haven't been able to find any caucus leader on the right that is airing information that it's not nuanced and true. Yeah. So it's really weird. I mean, it's weird to live in this age where people straight up say that's disinformation without engaging the substance and saying it's disinformation because
it's fake news.
There's the other thing, yeah.
Which, of course, in using that phrase, I reference a figure on the right.
Yeah.
Donald Trump.
Yeah.
News you don't like is fake news.
Yeah.
And so that's a cultural disease we have, and both sides of the political spectrum, and in our case, the theological spectrum, will do that sometimes.
Yeah.
We have to try to look through it.
Yeah, I mean, if you're going to be a person of integrity, you have to disregard who's saying something and just engage the content of it, and even if it's rendered in bad faith, the truth will set you free. You know, these are words from Jesus. And yes, there are ways of, you know, there are really bad faith questions like, when did you stop beating your wife? You know, that's a classic one. But there are a lot of people that I mean, I earnestly, as a conservative, I don't want people to be able to come to me and just say, you're hateful, and I have no response, or that's fake news, that's disinformation. But be able to explain, no, everything I'm doing is rooted in love, and if I am hateful, I want to see it. Help me.
Yeah.
But I highlighted this quote from Mark Tooley. He wrote a response article. The guy who originally posted it, Copeland, he removed his post when he got caught. But within that article, Tooley, in his response article, says, if traditional views are as intrinsically hateful as centrists, not to mention progressives, claim, then traditionalists, of course, should not be tolerated in the church any more than racists. And of course, they will not be. So he says, the start of that paragraph is, the dream about my death by a United Methodist minister who identifies not as a progressive but as a centrist also does not bode well for the toleration that centrists claim will protect traditionalists when United Methodism officially liberalizes its sexual teachings. So a lot of people in the center are saying, hey, we're probably going to liberalize our teachings, but there's always going to be room for traditionalists.
Right.
And he's saying that's a lie. Look how they're already responding to right-leaning people. They think that we're evil. We think that we're harbingers of hate. And it's just not honest to believe that there's going to be a place for right-leaning people in the UMC after a certain period.
Right. It's not realistic. You know, whether it's honest depends on if the person sincerely believes it. So, but it's not realistic.